Welcome to the Heartbeat Podcast, your trusted source for the latest breakthroughs and insights in cardiology. Here, we uncover the science behind every beat, bringing you cutting-edge research, expert discussions, and innovative approaches to heart health. Whether you're a medical professional, a curious learner, or someone passionate about understanding the heart's complexities, you're in the right place. So let's dive into today's episode and explore the pulse of modern cardiology together.
Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into some really cutting-edge research on heart failure.
Sounds good.
It was sent in by a listener.
Great.
All about this drug, Semaglutide,
Okay.
and its potential to treat this type of heart failure. It's becoming more and more common these days.
Yeah.
It's called HFpEF.
HFpEF.
You might be wondering, what's the big deal with HFpEF?
Right.
Well, think about your heart, right?
Yes,
It's like a powerful pump.
it is.
But with HFpEF, that pump starts to struggle, making it harder for your body to, get that oxygen-rich blood it needs.
And what makes HFpEF particularly challenging is that it's often linked to obesity. And until recently, we just haven't had a lot of great treatment options.
Exactly. That's why this research is so exciting.
Yeah.
It hints that semaglutide could be a real turning point in how we treat HFpEF,
Absolutely.
potentially offering, some much needed relief for a lot of people.
Huge.
This wasn't just some small study either.
Yeah.
This involved over 22,000 participants from 4 large clinical trials.
Wow.
It's like we've got this giant magnifying glass right on this drug,
Yeah.
helping us see its effects with amazing clarity.
And among all those participants, they focused on a group of 3,743 folks who specifically had HFpEF.
Okay.
And they divided that group pretty evenly between those receiving semaglutide and those on a placebo.
So what did they find? What's the big news here?
The big news. Semaglutide significantly reduced the risk of what doctors call a combined endpoint,
Okay.
which basically means a major health event related to heart failure. So we're talking things like cardiovascular death,
Yep.
hospitalization, or needing urgent care.
Okay.
Think of it as those really critical moments when your heart is truly struggling.
Yeah.
With semaglutide, the risk of those events was reduced by a substantial 31%.
On 31%.
Yeah.
That's big.
It is. To put it in perspective, imagine if you're at risk for HFpEF.
Yep.
This drug could mean 31% fewer chances of facing, a major health crisis like a heart attack or being hospitalized
Wow.
for worsening heart failure.
That's a huge step towards living a longer, healthier life.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's a game changer. But did the study look at those individual events, like hospitalization, separately?
They did. And this is where it gets even more impressive.
Oh.
The risk of just those worsening heart failure events,
Yeah.
hospitalizations and urgent visits was reduced by an amazing 41%.
Oh, wow.
So imagine 41% fewer trips to the hospital.
That's incredible.
41% fewer moments of panic and uncertainty.
Yeah.
That's a potential improvement in quality of life that's really hard to ignore.
That's remarkable. But yeah, I know you mentioned earlier that there's always a but in research, right?
Of course.
Right.
No study is perfect.
Right.
This one did have some limitations. While we saw these incredible reductions in those combined events and in hospitalizations, the study didn't show a statistically significant reduction in cardiovascular death alone.
Interesting.
Now, that doesn't mean that semaglutide isn't helping in that area.
Okay.
It just means that with the number of people in the study, it was hard to be totally sure.
I see.
It's like trying to hear a whisper in a noisy room. Sometimes you need a bigger sample size or a longer study to pick up on those quieter signals.
So potentially good news on that front, but we need more research to know for sure.
Exactly. And there's another really interesting detail.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about HFpEF often being linked to obesity?
I do.
Well, the researchers noticed something fascinating.
Okay.
The positive effects of semaglutide seemed even stronger in participants with a higher BMI.
Right.
Specifically those with a BMI of 35 or higher.
Mm-hmm.
It raises a lot of questions about how obesity might actually interact with heart failure and, how we might be able to tailor treatments to individual needs.
That's a great point. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right?
But this begs the question, how is semaglutide actually working?
Yeah.
Is it all about the weight loss, or is there something else going on?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's exactly what researchers are trying to figure out right now.
Right.
Weight loss is definitely a factor, but it might not be the whole story. The study also revealed that semaglutide seemed to reduce inflammation, which plays a big role in HFpEF, and it lessened the need for what we call water pills diuretics that people with heart failure often have to take.
Right.
So think of diuretics like these tiny plumbers in your body, helping to flush out that excess fluid that can build up when your heart isn't pumping as well as it should.
So it's like semaglutide is tackling the problem from multiple angles.
Yes.
It's not just treating symptoms. It's potentially addressing those underlying mechanisms of the disease.
You got it. And before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we should mention that the study did look at side effects.
Of course, yeah.
Which is always important. Semaglutide's safety profile was generally favorable. And get this, it actually resulted in fewer serious adverse events than the placebo.
Wait, fewer side effects than a sugar pill? Now, that's something you don't see every day. Fewer side effects than a placebo. Okay, so let's take a breath. Recap what we've learned so far.
Yeah.
It sounds like semaglutide is showing real promise as a treatment for HFpEF.
Absolutely.
Especially for folks who are struggling with obesity.
Right.
It can mean fewer hospital visits, better management of symptoms, and potentially even a longer life.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot to learn.
Oh, yeah.
Especially about the long-term effects. And how it works, it's magic. What do you think? Anything else stand out to you about this part of our deep dive?
You know, what stands out to me is that semaglutide could be more than just a treatment. It could be a turning point in how we think about preventing HFpEF altogether.
That's a great segue to the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
We'll explore that possibility and delve a little deeper into the mysteries of semaglutide. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You know, it's fascinating to think we might be on the cusp of shifting from simply treating HFpEF to actually preventing it.
I know it's like a whole new frontier in heart health.
Yeah.
But the study we've been discussing focused on semaglutide as a treatment, right, not as a preventative measure.
That's right. The people in the study already had HFpEF when they started taking semaglutide, but the fact that it led to weight loss, and not just a little, we're talking some significant reductions and lowered inflammation, that's what has researchers so intrigued about its potential for prevention. Remember, those are two of the biggest culprits behind HFpEF in the first place.
So it's like tackling the root of the problem before it even takes hold.
Precisely. Imagine if we could identify those at high risk for HFpEF, maybe those with obesity or prediabetes, and intervene early with lifestyle changes and a medication like semaglutide. It could be a powerful 1-2 punch.
That makes me wonder, are we talking about a future where we're prescribing this type of medication to prevent heart failure even before any symptoms appear?
It's a possibility, but of course that would require more research. We need to see how semaglutide performs over the long term, specifically in people who don't yet have HFpEF, and ensure it's safe and effective in that context.
Right, we can't get ahead of ourselves, but it's definitely exciting to think about.
Absolutely. And it highlights how crucial it is to understand the underlying causes of heart failure, things like obesity and inflammation. We're not just talking about medication here, we're talking about promoting healthier lifestyles, early intervention, and a holistic approach to care.
It's a reminder that taking care of our hearts isn't just about reacting to problems, it's about proactively protecting them. Now, you mentioned earlier that the study drew data from 4 different clinical trials, right? 2 of which weren't specifically focused on heart failure.
That's correct. One of those trials, called SELECT, was looking at semaglutide's effects on heart health in people who had obesity and a history of heart problems but didn't necessarily have diabetes. The other FLOW focused on folks with type 2 diabetes and chronic kidney disease. Both allowed participants with a history of heart failure regardless of the type.
So by combining the data from all 4 trials, researchers were able to get a broader view of how semaglutide impacts people with HFpEF.
Exactly. It's a testament to the collaborative nature of research. By pooling resources and sharing data, we can make discoveries at a much faster pace.
Speaking of collaboration, did the research team look at how semaglutide might interact with other medications commonly used to treat HFpEF? I'm thinking about those with HFpEF who are already on other meds. What does this mean for them?
That's a great question, and the researchers did consider that. 2 types of medications commonly prescribed for HFpEF are SGLT2 inhibitors and mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists. They wanted to know if adding semaglutide to the mix would cause any problems.
Okay, I'm holding my breath here. Did they find any red flags when it comes to mixing semaglutide with those other medications?
Actually, no. The analysis showed that the positive effects of semaglutide were consistent regardless of whether people were also taking those other medications. There is no evidence of any harmful interactions.
That's fantastic news. It means doctors could potentially prescribe semaglutide alongside existing treatments to provide even more comprehensive care.
Precisely. It opens up a lot of possibilities for personalized treatment plans.
When you were talking about the different groups of people in the study, it made me wonder, did they notice any trends in how well semaglutide worked based on things like age, gender, or ethnicity?
They did. They looked at how semaglutide performed across different subgroups based on factors like age, sex, race, history of heart attacks or strokes, and even, how well their heart was pumping. For the most part, the benefits held up pretty consistently across those groups.
So no matter who you are, if you have HFpEF, semaglutide might be a viable option.
That's what the data suggests, though more research is always needed. However, one intriguing pattern did emerge. Remember how we talked about those with higher BMIs potentially experiencing even stronger positive effects?
Yes. That was a fascinating finding.
Well, that pattern held true in this subgroup analysis as well. It seems like the degree of obesity could play a role in how someone responds to semaglutide.
That's so interesting. So it's not just about having obesity, but perhaps about the extent of it. It seems like the more someone weighs, the more they might benefit from semaglutide.
It seems that way, but of course, more research is needed to confirm that and understand why this connection exists.
That's all so promising, but I think it's important to remember that no study is perfect. Were there any limitations in this research that our listeners should be aware of?
You're absolutely right. No study is without limitations, and it's important to understand the nuances. As we mentioned earlier, the researchers didn't find a statistically significant reduction in cardiovascular death alone, possibly due to the limited number of deaths that occurred during the study period.
So that's something to keep in mind. We need more research to get a clearer picture of the long-term impact on mortality. Any other limitations?
Well, remember that 2 of the 4 trials, SELECT and FLOW, weren't designed specifically to study heart failure. They had broader focuses.
Right. They were looking at other conditions, but happened to include people with HFpEF.
Exactly. So while those trials provide valuable data, the information collected on heart health might not be as detailed as it would have been in a dedicated heart failure study. We might be missing some nuances.
So while this research is groundbreaking, it's not the final word on semaglutide and HFpEF. It's a stepping stone to a deeper understanding.
Exactly. Science is an ongoing process. It's about building upon previous knowledge and refining our understanding with each new discovery.
Speaking of new discoveries, I'm dying to know more about how semaglutide is actually working its magic on a deeper level. Is it all about the weight loss, or is there something more to this story?
That's the big question that researchers are grappling with. Weight loss is a big part of the picture, but it's becoming increasingly clear that there's more at play. We'll unravel those mysteries in the final part of our deep dive.
All right, so we've established that semaglutide is doing some pretty incredible things for people with HFpEF, but how is it working?
Right.
Is it simply the weight loss? Or is there more happening beneath the surface?
Well, that's the real mystery researchers are trying to unravel.
Yeah.
And the answer seems to be a lot more complex than just, shedding pounds.
Okay.
While weight loss is definitely a big factor, considering, how closely obesity is linked to HFpEF, there's growing evidence that semaglutide might be directly impacting the heart itself.
That's fascinating. What kind of evidence are we talking about here?
Well, remember how we discussed that the study found semaglutide reduces inflammation?
I do, yeah.
Chronic inflammation is kind of like this constant fire smoldering, within the heart muscle, causing damage and stiffness over time. Semaglutide seems to act like a fire extinguisher, calming that inflammatory response and potentially protecting the heart from further harm.
So by dampening that inflammation, it's giving the heart a chance to heal and function better.
Exactly. And there's another clue. The study also found that people taking semaglutide needed fewer diuretics.
Oh, right. Those water pills.
Yeah.
That help remove excess fluid.
Exactly.
From the body. But why would semaglutide affect that?
Well, it suggests that semaglutide could be improving the heart's ability to pump efficiently.
Okay.
A stronger pump means less fluid buildup, so the body doesn't need as much help from those diuretics. It's like semaglutide's giving the heart a workout, making it stronger, more capable.
So it's not just masking the symptoms, it's potentially addressing the root cause. That's incredible.
It really is. We're just beginning to understand this complex interplay between weight loss, inflammation, and heart function. And how a drug like semaglutide can influence all those factors for the better.
It's like a domino effect, right? targeting one key area, like weight, triggers all these positive changes
Exactly.
throughout the body,
Yeah.
ultimately benefiting the heart. It's a holistic approach to healing.
Perfect analogy. But we do need to, stay grounded in reality.
Sure.
While these findings are really exciting, we're still in the early stages of understanding these mechanisms.
Yeah.
More research is needed to pinpoint exactly how semaglutide is working, at the cellular level. What's happening in those tiny factories within our cells.
Right. More research is always a good thing. But even with these unanswered questions, the potential of this research is immense.
Absolutely. It opens a whole new avenue for treating and potentially preventing HFpEF.
Yeah.
This could be a major win, not only for individuals, but for our healthcare systems as well.
So for you listening out there, what does all this mean? Well, if you're living with HFpEF or worried about your risk, this research offers a glimmer of hope.
Absolutely.
On the horizon.
Yeah.
Signals a potential shift towards, more effective and personalized therapies.
Right.
Therapies that could dramatically improve quality of life and maybe even prevent this condition.
From developing in the first place. Exactly.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but if there's one key takeaway I hope you walk away with, it's this. The future of heart failure treatment is evolving. New discoveries are happening all the time, and there's good reason to be optimistic.
Couldn't agree more. Keep your ears open because I have a feeling we'll be hearing a lot more about semaglutide and other groundbreaking therapies.
As always, remember to talk to your doctor about any health concerns and, discuss whether these new treatments might be right for you. Knowledge is power, and we hope this deep dive has empowered you to take control of your heart health.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and take good care of yourselves.
Thank you for tuning into the Heartbeat Podcast, where we uncover the science behind every beat. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform to stay updated with our latest discussions and insights. We'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, feedback, or questions, and let's continue exploring the pulse of modern cardiology together. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep your heart healthy.